Multiple sources tell CNN Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth revealed attack plans for airstrikes on Houthi rebels in Yemen in another Signal chat. This one included his wife, brother, and personal attorney. Now, this second Signal chat is in addition to the one Hegseth used to communicate about military plans with cabinet officials last month that is now under investigation by the Defense Department's acting inspector general. I want to go straight to CNN's Kevin Liptak, who is at the White House for more on this. Kevin, what are we learning about this?
Yeah, and if this all sounds sort of reminiscent of that scandal that engulfed the administration about a month ago, it should, because the Secretary of Defense, we are now learning, shared very similar details about the U.S. attack plans on the Houthi rebels in Yemen on a second Signal group. And we understand that this included things like takeoff times for some of those fighter jets as they were preparing to strike those targets in Yemen. The big difference here is who comprised each of these Signal groups, because remember that first time around, that group was created by the National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. It was intended to coordinate this attack with members of the cabinet officials who were in top national security positions in the administration, and he inadvertently included the journalist Jeffrey Goldberg. This new Signal group that we are just learning about this evening included some members of Pete Hegseth's inner circle who are, it's not clear what reason they would have to have this information about the strikes that the U.S. was planning to carry out. It included his brother and his personal attorney. They both work at the Pentagon. It's not clear whether they have security clearances. It also included his wife, Jennifer, who has accompanied him previously in meetings with other foreign officials, which has raised some eyebrows among certain officials at the Pentagon. Now, as you mentioned, that original Signal sort of snafu is now being investigated by the Inspector General at the Pentagon. It's not clear whether this latest revelation will be included in the review. The Pentagon officially has not commented on these latest revelations, which I should note were first reported by the New York Times. But this does punctuate a period of chaos inside the Pentagon and inside the inner circle of Pete Hegseth. You'll remember just last week, senior officials who were in sort of his front office at the Pentagon were fired essentially for what officials described as a leak investigation. And this is all sort of drawing questions, including from some loyalists, some allies of Pete Hegseth, at how this chaos has been allowed to perpetuate. We just heard from John Ulyat, who until recently was Pete Hegseth's press secretary at the Pentagon. He says that it's been a month of total chaos at the Pentagon, from leaks of sensitive operational plans to mass firings. The dysfunction is now a major distraction for the president, who deserves better from his senior leadership. Ulyat goes on to say even strong backers of the secretary, like me, must admit the last month has been a full-blown meltdown at the Pentagon, and it's becoming a real problem for the administration. Part of the problem, of course, is that this is not sort of a quiet period for national security. You have Pete Hegseth making sort of preparations on the president's command, these designs on the Panama Canal. He was just there visiting earlier this month. You also have this buildup of U.S. assets in the Middle East in preparation for a potential Israeli strike on Iran. You also have tensions in Asia. So this is a fraught period for the Pentagon to be undergoing, this period of chaos. And certainly, I think now you'll hear from officials who are questioning whether Pete Hegseth is sort of the man for the job at this very fraught moment. I should also note that when those original war plans, attack plans were shared in the Signal group, the administration and the White House and President Trump denied that there was anything classified contained in that information. Of course, that drew a lot of skepticism from almost every national security analyst that we talked to, Jessica.
Yeah. All right, Kevin Liptak with the breaking news there at the White House. Thank you so much. And joining us now to talk more about this, CNN senior military analyst and retired U.S. Air Force Colonel Cedric Leighton. Also with us, former Pentagon Deputy Press Secretary Sabrina Singh. Sabrina, I want to start first with you. let's zoom out for a second. I want to get your thoughts just as you're hearing all of this information, this idea that there was a second Signal chat where he was sharing this information about these strikes with people like his wife, his brother, his personal attorney, who don't have security clearances. What are you thinking as someone who stood at that podium at the Pentagon and knows how this information is typically handled?
I mean, it's truly shocking. I think when I saw this reporting coming out from the New York Times at first, there was no question there were going to be more Signal threads. Who started them? This one in particular was started by Pete Hegseth. And for him to add, his wife, his brother, his personal attorney, people that don't need access or need to know about classified information about operations involving the Houthis in any way. I mean, this is something that we would never do under a previous administration. And on top of that, putting these classified details into a commercial texting app like Signal, again, that puts our fighter pilots at risk. That was something that, certainly concerned me deeply when these texts were first exposed just a month ago. It's that same concern. It's putting the operation, those fighter pilots who are in the air about to conduct this operation at risk with people that don't need to know this information.
And Cedric, I want to go off what Sabrina's saying there from the military perspective. Again, just the potential for danger for our men and women in uniform. What kind of potential for danger is there if this information were to get leaked or get into the wrong hands? Again, this is an encrypted app, but it is not a secure line. And in fact, his advisors had warned him that it wasn't a secure place to be sharing information like this.
Yeah, that's right, Jessica. And Sabrina's exactly right. First of all, we look at fighter pilots and all of the effort that goes into planning air operations of this type. People don't realize, if you're not involved in air operations, a lot of people don't understand that these are very complex operations, and there's a lot that can go wrong as you plan them. And one of the key things is when you actually plan these operations and you have specific things like time over target, the type of ordnance that's going to be dropped, the type of targets that you're going after, the exact target that you're going after, all of those kinds of things are absolutely essential elements of information.
New alarming reports reveal deepening turmoil at the Pentagon under Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. Politico reporting Hegseth's chief of staff will soon step down, and that 3 other top officials were put on leave and then fired over their role in the Signal chat scandal. In a Washington Post report, the 3 officials claim they were never told what they were investigated for or if there was even a real investigation of leaks to begin with. Joining us now is former Deputy Pentagon Press Secretary Sabrina Singh. Sabrina, thanks for joining us. And, Hegseth's already shorthanded leadership team is now without 4 of the senior officials I was just describing. He also oversaw the removal of almost a dozen senior military leaders, including the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Is this normal new chief, new team, or is there a plus in this? And what is that plus?
Well, I mean, quite frankly, no, nothing about this is normal. You don't see an immediate purge of your senior leadership that you have not only elected to be around you, but appointed yourself as a Secretary of Defense. So again, what's being reported too is that these individuals were fired because of unauthorized disclosures, whether that be to the press or elsewhere. And what's ironic here is that the Secretary of Defense, the person who leads, our men and women in uniform and our civilians, also put unauthorized, classified information into a commercial texting app, and yet there have been no consequences for him. He has not been held responsible. He hasn't even, gone before Congress to explain his behavior. So, of course, different circumstances for different people, but nothing about this is normal. And I think, Congress and others should really look into, not only the firings of these individuals, but also, of course, looking into Pete Hegseth.
Let's dig a little deeper here, Sabrina. The 3 fired officials, they're claiming that unnamed Pentagon officials slandered their character with baseless attacks, their words. They also say they don't know if there is still an active investigation into the Signal leak. When we think of the Pentagon, and you know this culture better than I do, we're thinking of decorum, rank and file, and process and structure. This doesn't seem to be the case, at least based on what they are saying.
Yeah, and the Pentagon is an organization that certainly not only thrives on structure and order, but there is due process, and that's the case usually with any organization or agency. So to see these firings and to have these individuals speak out and actually say we have no idea why we were removed from our jobs. Either means that there hasn't been an official investigation launched into their removings, or they're just not aware of it. And both are a bit concerning because, even if they did disclose classified, unauthorized information, that is a problem. That does warrant an investigation, but they also should be made aware of that as well.
Sabrina, when you look at these pictures of the Pentagon, it reminds us clearly of the complexity here, as well as the number of people that you've probably interfaced with over your career. Have you spoken to any of them recently, and what have they said about this potential idea that there's concern about efficiency and, of course, the defense of the United States of America?
The people that I still speak to are focused on the job, but they're focused on keeping our country safe. They're focused on their mission. And we have amazing people in uniform serving every single day, not just at the Pentagon, but all around the world, and the civilians and their counterparts as well. They are really keeping our country safe every single day. And I, truly applaud them for continuing to stay the course with the mission. They have done.
People in the military, we were wondering earlier, or some people were wondering. I know we weren't wondering, but society was wondering, why are so many respected voices that have decades, together probably centuries of experience in the military, why are they so furious about Trump's conduct? Even in some ways more than before, because before there was a lot of ideological disagreements with Trump about how he ran the military and how, if he was to come to power again, how he would run the military. Not so much on his competence. They did talk about that, but on his desire to use the military against peaceful American protesters, against American citizens, which you're not supposed to do. If you have issues, you use the police, not the United States military, against citizens, all of these sorts of things. And that he wants to just invade every country, seemingly. But it's also now it's about competence. Not only is Trump a menace because he wants to weaponize the military against his own people and weaponize it against American allies potentially, but also they're not running it competently. This particular thing was not an issue with Trump's first Secretary of Defense. Say what you will, he picked somebody actually qualified. His first Secretary of Defense was a qualified person. Ideologically, I don't know if we would agree, but he was a qualified person. There were some qualified people in that first Trump cabinet. There were. Qualified doesn't mean I would agree. Qualified doesn't even mean I would confirm them if I was a senator, because I might think their positions are dangerous. But they met the qualifications for the job. What Trump did is he picked a man who was unqualified for the position, and a man who, let's be clear, I'm not judging here, had some concerns about his personal conduct with regard to the beverages he drinks, at least allegedly, and some people felt he wasn't able to do the job. And they gave him the job, and this is what happens. And because of these buffooneries, people could die.